Hey there, it's Kristen here. I just got home from a talk that my doctor, Dr. Ian Carroll, gave up at Stanford. I literally just walked in the door and I decided that I need to do a my story video. The talk he gave was awesome. It was super informative. It was about really call to action for those of you out there who are either suffering from a spinal fluid leak, or maybe you know somebody who is suffering from a spinal fluid leak and they don't know it and they need to get diagnosed, and they can really get better. This is treatable. It's something that the doctors can fix. And I get it that like so many people out there are suffering from, chronic illnesses and we don't know what's wrong with us, and you see doctor after doctor after doctor and you don't get an answer. Well, this just might be an answer. Because it's something that deals with all of these like crazy conditions where it's like they're vague. I have headaches and I have neck aches and I'm nauseous and I'm dizzy, and all of these symptoms go along with a lot of other things. So I think there are people out there who have been either misdiagnosed or you haven't been diagnosed yet, and this just might be what's wrong with you. So anyway, his talk was really detailed about everything, and so I'll post a link to his video, and in the presentation he gave, he did mention my case, and some of my brain scans are up on the screen, which is kind of crazy. But anyway, this video is going to be a brief overview of my specific story. So to start out, when I was 7 years old, I first started having symptoms of dizziness and like I was really tired, and my mom, like I've seen the notes, and my mom like wrote in her little journal, I was like 7, and she would say, "Oh, Kristen stayed home from school today. She was feeling dizzy." And it's not really a common thing for a 7-year-old. But it was very infrequent, didn't happen that often. And I remember fainting for the first time in 2nd grade. I was standing in line, all the kids have to line up, and I was waiting for everybody to get in line, and I fainted. I remember it very vividly, and waking up and all the kids standing around me, and it wasn't fun, but it didn't happen again for a long time. But I did always have trouble, playing with the other kids. Like I couldn't run as much. I would get out of breath really easily. And I got headaches, and I would complain about headaches a lot, but it was just a little girl. Like nobody took it seriously. Fast forward into middle school. Of course, I'm going through puberty, and I'm complaining of headaches, and I'm complaining I'm tired. All the doctors just say that that's normal, and you're a girl, and you're going through changes. And up until that point, I was pretty active, considering I was on the swim team, and I was playing volleyball, and I was always like off riding my bike, or I was big into snowboarding. So I was active, but then starting around probably 9th grade, I started having these dizzy spells a lot more frequent, and I would stand in line and I remember just getting super, super warm. My body starts tingling, and the peripheral vision starts to come in, and everything goes black on the sides. It's like tunnel vision. And I start sweating, and my ears start ringing, and I get this like really heavy pit feeling in my stomach. I start to get nauseous, and unless I sit down and get my body flat, I would faint. And if I was running in volleyball practice, I would just get super dizzy and pass out on the floor. So it got progressively worse and worse up until finally I was 17, my senior year in high school. And all of the doctors, I was from a small town in Michigan, so all of the doctors there just kept saying, that there's nothing really wrong with me. All my labs and everything come back normal. But I was just having these crazy migraines all the time. I was fainting all the time. And I actually found POTS online by myself, and I, convinced my parents that I think this is what I have, and it's really serious. And so we went to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, and I was there for like a week and going through all this testing, and they did a tilt table test, and so I was diagnosed with POTS at 17, and although, I had a diagnosis now, all they really told me was, coping mechanisms and what I could do. So I'm supposed to have a ton of salt in my diet. I'm, supposed to drink 3 liters of water a day. You can wear an abdominal binder. You can wear compression stockings. And I was on medications for my migraines. I was on a Midodrine for my blood pressure. I've been on different heart medications. I've been on a handful of antidepressants. They even at Mayo, they still thought like, oh, you're depressed, and it's like, well, duh, I'm depressed. I don't know what's going on with me. It was affecting my normal social life too. So medication after medication, just trying all these things. I was seeing cardiologists and neurologists, and it was a mess. But I had a diagnosis. I now know that I have postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And I identified with that. And I was, knowing that, okay, I have POTS, I have to eat more salt, I have to not let myself get dehydrated, and just my autonomic nervous system is wired a little differently, and I'm not able to do the things that everybody does. So my coping was avoid anything that would cause symptoms. So I stopped being active. I was now eating a ton of salt, which is usually foods that have a ton of carbs, so I gained a bunch of weight. And I was, functioning for the most part. I wouldn't walk for long distances. I basically just wouldn't do anything that would cause symptoms. So yeah, I was doing okay. I was managing, day-to-day life fine. And I had headaches in between, but nothing was that bad. So for a few years, I was okay. I made it to college. And first couple years, not that big of a deal. It was, I think, my 3rd year in college. I don't know. I think it was just a choice that I made to kind of start trying to be a little more active, and I wanted to lose some weight, and I don't know. I was pushing my body more. I also had a job where I was standing up all day. If you work an 8-hour shift, you're standing there all day long, and I fainted a few times at work. And I even fainted at my second job. I could not walk from one class, across campus to the other class without needing to sit down and take a break. I fainted in the middle of campus. I fainted in the middle of hallways. It was getting really bad. Migraines were also super bad. Couldn't even tell you how many times I went to the ER just to get medications to deal with the pain that I was in. My roommate would come home and I'd be laying on the floor just bawling because I was in so much pain. Went back to the Mayo Clinic to like reassess my diagnosis. Again, yes, you have POTS. This is, what happens in a tilt table test. And, at that point, I had now had a lot of, little tricks to fight the tilt table test. The first time I did it at 17, I fainted after 8 minutes. The second time, I managed to stand there for, I think, almost 45 minutes. And I was tightening my stomach and shaking my legs and all of these things in fighting the urge to faint. And so, I don't know, I guess they really didn't tell me that much. They switched my medications around, told me to drink more water, told me that I need to be, exercising, and that I, should be doing leg exercises, and if I build muscle, I'll be able to pump that blood back up to my head like I'm supposed to. And this isn't a what is POTS video, but I can do one of those if you guys want. So anyway, I still have POTS. And at that point, I think, is when I really started to identify with it. When I was diagnosed at 17, I didn't want to tell anybody. I didn't like feeling different. I didn't want to have that label. Now, I think I was like 21, 22, and now I was ready and I was identifying with it. And this is what I have, and this is my condition. And I started meeting other people online, other POTSies, and the community for POTS and for dysautonomia is really amazing. And everybody sticks together, and it's, we have a chronic illness, and we have an invisible illness, and there's a lot of identification and support system if you connect with each other online, and it was really good for me. And so I am a POTSie, and I figured out ways to deal with it, and I was able to exercise again a little bit and able to pretty much get my life back to normal. But again, at the beginning I was just avoiding anything that would cause symptoms, and then I started working out and started to be able to manage that heart rate a little bit better, and it got to the point where I was, more or less had a normal life. And I would say 2 years or so, where, I still had headaches regularly, but they weren't the headaches that had me crying on the floor, and they weren't, I wasn't fainting. I would still get dizzy spells and still have all these symptoms. Standing in line, I couldn't do. Standing to do the dishes, I couldn't do. I would still, have to take super fast showers because I feel too nauseous to continue. But for the most part, I had a normal life for about 2 years. No major things that were preventing me from, holding a job and managing. So exactly 1 year ago today, I was at work and I was feeling nauseous. It was busy at work. I was kind of stressed out for the past week or so. So I had a migraine, but I'm just telling myself that the migraine was due to being stressed out because of work. I was at work and got super nauseous, and I felt like I was going to pass out. I almost did, walking from my desk to the break room to get some water. I ended up just laying on the floor at my desk at work for, close to an hour trying to feel better. And I knew something was wrong. And so I just went home. I rested. It was a Friday, so I went home, I rested. I was like, I'll be fine by Monday. That Sunday afternoon, I landed in the ER. And that was January 16th of 2015. It is now January 14th, 2016. And So 1 year, and I can say that I have been through a lot. So from that day, I started, this crazy, I don't even know what to call it. I say it's like when I got sick, but it's like I've been sick for a long time. But when I got sick is the bad period of this condition, whatever. I was bedridden for nearly 6 months. I was in and out of the hospital. I would go in, explain everything, tell them, I have this insane headache. It's just, it was so bad. It was like this just huge pressure in my head. There was like these 3 really sharp points over here, this like radiating like from the back of my head on both sides, but just like the worst migraine I've ever had. And so I'd go to the ER, and we did get me admitted, and I would get a bunch of medications, and okay, I've got some pain meds, and I'm feeling better, and I'm not so nauseous anymore, and they, anti-nausea pills and everything, and they discharge me, and I wake up the next morning, managed to be okay for a little bit, and what do you know, the next day, I'm back in the ER. So this cycle went on for a while, and yeah, I would feel better after a while, just like laying at home and relaxing. And as soon as I would try to do something, I would faint, trying to walk to the bathroom, or I would faint, just trying to make myself a sandwich in the kitchen. The head pain was so intense, I couldn't think. So it was just months of seeing a cardiologist, having a Zeo patch on, seeing neurologists, trying tons of different medications. I was going in for DHE infusions, going into an infusion center and sitting there for a few hours and getting some meds and hoping that would last me through the week. And then I'd come back the following week and get it again. I was just hyped up on painkillers, and it wasn't helping. So I finally got in to see a POTS specialist at Stanford, and I don't know, I saw her and I kind of felt some hope, but at the same time I was just like, this is the same as I've been dealing with for the past 20-some years. So I was kind of discouraged, and I didn't know what to do, and I was just, trying to get by with these infusions and with just avoiding again and trying to stay hydrated and painkillers for the headaches. But the main problem was the headache and the brain fog and the confusion. Like, I was trying to get back to work. I mean, granted, I was on disability. I had to stop working from that January 16th. And I think it was April, I finally was doing okay for the most part. I wasn't, lying in bed feeling like I was going to die every day. And I was able to go back to work part-time, working from home. And I do graphic design, so I just need to be on a computer and try to work, so that should be fine, right? That's when I noticed that it's more than just me feeling like I'm going to faint and having a headache, because even if that was under control, I would stare at the computer and I just could not remember what to do. I couldn't remember my passwords. I couldn't remember very simple tasks. Like, I couldn't do it. And I remember trying to have conversations with my boyfriend. He'd be sitting right in front of me, and I knew what I wanted to say, but I couldn't get my mind to tell my mouth to speak the words. And that was a really, really, low moment for me, because at that point I knew it was more than POTS. But I still didn't know what to do. I've seen all the doctors. I've had all kinds of blood work and MRIs and everything. Everything came back completely normal. So I thought I was going crazy. I'm like, this is not in my head. Even people around me were trying to tell me it was in my head, and my sister is just saying like, oh, just you have to think positive. And anyway, I got a phone call one day. I think it was like a Saturday afternoon from Dr. Carroll. And he calls me up and says, you don't know me, but I got your name from Dr. Friday, and I know you think you have POTS, but I think you have this other thing. And I was like, not sure what to think of that, but he asked me to come in. So I went into his office a few days later, and we talked about everything, and he was pretty sure I had a spinal fluid leak. And I will say I was extremely skeptical because, you know, I've been told for the past 10 years that I have POTS and that my autonomic nervous system is just wired this way, and this is what I'm going to have, and I'm probably going to have it for the rest of my life. And he's telling me that, no, I think you just have a little hole in your spine, and you're leaking some fluid, and we're just going to go and patch that up, and you're going to feel fine. And I was like, yeah, you're crazy. Like, that's not going to help me. But at that point, I'm like, I had tried everything else. And everything seemed to be matching up. Every symptom that he would say, do you have this? Yes. Do you have this? Yes. And I'll do another video about all of the symptoms and how you could kind of say, like, what are my chances that I do have this? But everything on the list, like, I would say 90% of the things that he was asking, my answer was yes. And I was like, this is kind of sounding a little crazy. So we went ahead and did an MRI. Came back normal. Completely normal. And I was like, well, see, told you I didn't have it. And he goes, well, it's normal, but, you know, there's enough evidence. Because it's, I guess one part, there was something in my MRI. He said, there's enough evidence, and since your story is so good that everything matches up, let's go ahead and do a CT myelogram. So here I have this doctor telling me that he wants to go and put a needle in my spine and find out, with contrast, and find out, you know, if my fluid is leaking. So that's the problem, is a lot of people hear this, and doctors, they're like, no, we're not going to go do that invasive procedure just to find out if you have something. But I'm glad he did. And I gotta tell you, that is not exactly an easy procedure. It's pretty painful. And I can do a video about that if you guys are interested. But I did the CT myelogram. And I remember waiting for those results because I felt really bad afterwards. And I woke up the next morning and I could not lift my head off of the pillow without just bawling. I put my head down on the pillow, I was okay. The second I just tried to like lean myself up on my shoulders, I thought I was gonna die. So since I had such a bad reaction, like then they knew that by actually doing the CT myelogram and giving me another puncture, that I now am leaking because they caused the leak. But luckily enough, so I called, so it was like 7:30 in the morning. I was in so much pain. I was like, does Dr. Carroll have my results yet? Because I don't know what to do if you don't tell me that this is what's going on. I'm going to the ER right now. And they called me back a few minutes later and said, your surgery is scheduled. Get yourself here as fast as possible. And it was interesting because I was sitting here alone and had to call myself an Uber to come pick me up and bring me to the hospital to go have this surgery. And I could not sit up I was in the back of the car, laying down. This driver probably thought I was crazy. I was in so much pain. And I remember getting there and they got a wheelchair for me, and I got up to the waiting room and just sitting there in tears, in so much pain. And I went in for my first blood patch. And that was what changed everything. And if anybody's interested, I can go into detail about what a blood patch is and my experience with it. But long story short, I woke up the next morning and it was gone. All of this intense, deep, radiating pain that had had me in tears for the past 6 months was gone. And it was crazy. So, guess what? I was leaking. And that's what was causing all of this crazy pain. And so I got better. There is a recovery process that goes with it, but not even a month later, I was back hiking. I was working out again. I went back to work full time. I traveled. I was completely back to normal. Now, at that point, my normal, I still had a lot of surface pain in my forehead. I still had a lot of ringing in my ears. I still had a lot of pain between my shoulder blades. My neck was still sore and had a lot of fatigue. But for me, that was normal, and that was so much better than I had been dealing with. Like, I felt phenomenal. Went back to work, everything. I'm doing great, right? About 2 months in, the headaches started getting worse and worse and worse. And I would take medications again, and it's not helping. And so we went ahead and decided to do a second blood patch. My second blood patch went well. I had a longer recovery period this time where I stayed flat for, I think, 4 days afterwards. Which, yes, I had to take time off from work and was still trying to, manage. But within 4 or 5 days, I was okay. I'm back to work. And I think it was 11 days after my second patch, I got on a plane and went to Europe. And I felt fine. I only had like 1 sick day there where I had a headache and I wasn't feeling that great. And I came back and I was fine and I went back to work. And I think it was about 2.5 months after that one. The headaches are kind of there. My ears are ringing now a lot. But day to day, I'm okay. The headache I have at this point is minor. Like, I'm walking around already saying, like, this is a success. Like, I feel fine. But I do still have these ongoing, like, weird symptoms. Dr. Carroll said that, you probably are still leaking, and I think we should do a third blood patch. Now, I'm saying, no way, I'm not going through that again. I'm not having another, week-long recovery thing. Like, I feel fine. I don't want to do it. And for, it was the end of the year and insurance was changing after January. And So I decided if I'm going to do this, I might as well do it now, and thank God I did. I had my third blood patch on December 17th, 2015. It is now January 14th, so 1 month later, and so after my third blood patch, I immediately went into high pressure, and going from the moment that they put the blood patch in, all the blood into my back, I started crying. It was so painful, but at that point, they had sealed everything for the first time. And instead of having me flat and letting it recover, I actually was tilted on like a 45-degree angle, and within a few days, I was doing okay because I was taking Diamox to help myself regulate now having a sealed dura in my spine. And so I was on Diamox for about two and a half weeks. And now it's been about 5 or 6 days where I've been off of Diamox, and I can say that for the past few days, this is the first time in my entire life that I don't feel anything in my head. Even when I used to say I was fine and I was good, I still felt that pressure, or that there was something, but I thought that was normal. I thought that feeling, pressure was just a normal feeling. Like, it wasn't what I would consider pain anymore, because it wasn't painful. I could feel it, but I didn't know until now that you're not supposed to feel anything, because now I don't feel, I don't know my head is there. I don't know my brain is there, whereas my entire life I felt it. Like, I had a headache my entire life, even though I didn't know I had a headache. And it's just, seriously, I now feel amazing. I have way more energy than I've had in I don't even know how long. I've always, always, always said that I feel really tired and I'm just drowsy, and mornings have been super hard for me. Like, I've just always been tired. I could never felt like I got enough sleep. And for the first time, the last few weeks, like, I wake up and I feel okay. Like, I'm still like, oh, it's morning, I don't want to wake up, but I'm having more energy, and like, especially for this late in the day, it's 10 o'clock at night right now, and I feel fine. Like, I don't have a headache, whereas normally by 6, 7 o'clock, I couldn't handle it anymore. I was just like in so much pain, I'd have to go lay down. So I can now say that I don't know if I ever had POTS. And that's just really hard for me to say because, like I said, I've identified with POTS and with dysautonomia for 10 years. And for me to have that kind of taken away and needing to like replace it with, no, now I'm cured and now I'm fixed and this is what was wrong with me this whole time, is crazy. Now I don't know if these POTS symptoms are going to completely go away. At this point in time, I do have a little bit of ringing from time to time, but it has been seeming to go away less and less since this last blood patch. And I do get a little bit of dizziness if I notice I'm standing in line for too long, but it's literally almost nothing. So, yeah, I don't think that I had POTS or that I had dysautonomia. But the thing about those is it's a syndrome that isn't that well known, and so I think there is definitely a link between POTS and dysautonomia, and spinal fluid leaks. And a lot of people who are suffering and they were diagnosed with POTS may have been misdiagnosed, or there's part of your diagnosis that is missing. Yeah, maybe I do still have POTS to a touch of it, but it's not that bad. Like, I can function fine. So I guess this is a really, really long video of my story and where I'm at today, and I will continue to see how my symptoms continue to improve and see what happens here, but I don't think that I'm going to need another blood patch. Yeah, at some point maybe I will, experience some whiplash accident and have another tear and need to get patched again, but if it happens, now I know what to do, and I just have to go get a blood patch again and I will be fine. So anyway, I'm sorry that this is a really ridiculously long video, but that's my story. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to let me know. I'm happy to answer them. And if you want to know anything about POTS, or if you want to know about, how the diagnosis process of the spinal fluid leak was, or how the procedures were, anything, let me know. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. And yeah, if you guys think that you possibly could have a spinal fluid leak, I really urge you to get in touch with your doctor or with Dr. Carol and find out, because I have a completely new life now and it feels amazing, and I just really hope that anybody else who is suffering the way that I was, if that's you right now, like, you deserve to feel good again, and it's awesome, and I cannot thank Dr. Carol enough for figuring this out for me. And so I hope that this video maybe will help one other person get diagnosed. Alright guys, I wish you the best.